Thank you for being with us. My name is Karen Kiefer, and I am the director of the church at the 21st Century Center here at Boston College. And our mission of our center is to be a catalyst and a resource for the renewal of the church. I like to think that we listen, we see need, and then we try to meet that need with a resource. And then give it all away and give it back to the church to strengthen the church. Obviously, post-pandemic, can I say that? Post-pandemic. Parishes need a lot of support, and everyone in this room has not only been probably raised by a Catholic family, but they've been raised by their parish. And that's changed over the years, we know that, but the parish is still such a vital piece of our Catholic faith. So tonight we're excited to host a conversation with some of my three favorite people to just talk about parish life and new ideas and best practices. And we're going to talk for a little bit, and then I'm going to open it up so that you can talk and that you can, share your ideas. I really believe that we have a contagious faith, and it's our responsibility as Catholics to share that faith with each other and also to share our ideas with each other so we can continue to grow. You'll notice on your table that there's a lot of things. One that's very important is the bio sheet, which shares with you a little bit about the background of our panelists. And it gives you a more in-depth explanation of their journey. But I just want to say, I'm so happy tonight to have Jeanne Cregan. I met Jeanne Cregan actually through another Catholic friend, Bob Fanning, and we have a lot of family on the South Shore. And I just hear whispers of this young woman who is just doing extraordinary things, not only in Duxbury, but now in Cohasset and Hull. And we've had Jeanne as a guest at a couple of our other programs, and she just has lots of wisdom and lots of energy, so thanks for being here, Jeanne. Father Jim Laughlin, full disclosure, he was my pastor in Wellesley years ago, and he just led with gusto and with grace, and actually was just an extraordinary leader of our collaborative. And he walked into a situation that I'm sure a lot of you can relate to, where parishes don't want to merge and they don't want to collaborate. But he changed all that, and now is in Wellesley. How long have you been gone from Wellesley to 10?
No, it's coming up on 7 years.
7 years. Oh. Anyway, I'm so happy to have you here because you are grace. So thank you, Father Jim. And then my friend Jeanne Cregan, probably one of the most creative people I've ever met in my life. Not only is she a pre-K teacher at St. Columbkille's Partnership School here in Brighton, but she's had a lot of experience at the parish level. And her collaborative / partnership is a Catholic school, so you come from a different perspective. But she's a programming whiz. Again, I talked about seeing need, and then she tries to marry that need with a creative program. So we're going to uncover some more ideas there. I also wanted to draw your attention to our magazine that just is hot off the press. 20 years we've been doing the work here at the Church in the 21st Century Center. And that magazine is a compilation of a lot of our resources and a lot of voices. So you're one of the first to get it, so grab it and run. And then throughout our conversation, we're also going to shine a light on some of the resources that you can take with you, ideas that you can take home and share with other parishioners. Before we begin our conversation, I obviously want to pray together, but I do want to make special note that we have the longest travelers from a parish, right here, Newark, New Jersey. They drove. I mean, unbelievable. And they're all about forming community, coming together and taking road trips and going on a field trip and kind of realizing the power of being together, right? They could have watched the video. They could have just said, no, we're not going to go. But they didn't. So thank you for really practicing what you preach and for giving us inspiration. So thank you for being with us. We look forward to hearing from you during kind of open mic. So let's begin with a prayer for parishes and Catholic schools. In the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for gathering us together and calling us to serve as your disciples. You have charged us through your Son Jesus with the great mission of evangelizing and witnessing your love to the world. Send your Holy Spirit to guide us as we discern your will for the spiritual renewal of our parishes and Catholic schools. Give us strength and courage and clear vision as we use our gifts to serve you. We entrust our parish family to the care of Mary, our mother, and ask for her intercession and guidance as we strive to bear witness to the gospel and build vibrant Catholic communities. Amen. Amen. Okay, so I want to begin with Father Jim. And I was saying to Anna and to Jeanne, feel free to jump in. We're going to talk for a little bit, and probably in like 35 minutes, we're going to open it up and have you join us for the conversation. I had mentioned that Father Jim was part of the Wellesley Collaborative, and then also part of the Wellesley Collaborative, which is just for those that are from Newark who aren't around here. That's about 30 to 35 minutes west. And I don't know how you did what you did, Father Jim, back then, because I remember going to those meetings and it was this parish versus that parish, and somehow you were the bridge, you know? And so I want you to talk a little bit about some of the lessons that you learned and that you were able to bring to your new collaborative. And then I'll see if Jeanne and Anna want to chime in.
Thanks, Karen. I think one of the most important things is realizing as a pastor coming into a new set of parishes that you're not beginning with a tabula rasa, that they already have a long history with traditions, with a certain culture that grows up around the parish, certain gospel priorities that might be prioritized in some places more than others, and also particularly the history of the leadership style going into it. And those two parishes in Wayland, it's interesting, my two parishes in Wellesley and the two parishes in Wayland are both exactly 2.3 miles apart, which is really kind of a funny thing. Although Washington Street and Wellesley, that 2.3 miles would take about 25 minutes. It was quicker in Wayland, it's a little bit more country out there. But the parishes could not have been more different in their history of leadership style. St. Zephyrins would be, I guess I would have to describe as progressive, with a lot of lay involvement, a lot of lay leadership, and really a sense of lay ownership of the parish. And St. Anne's grew up in a much more clerical model. I think one of the things I'd like to say from the beginning, though, is that I think the most important thing that I do as a pastor, especially in establishing communities, is to love people for who they are and not try to impose. I'm not going in with a preconceived vision of what's going to happen in these parishes. It has to grow up organically from who the people are. yes, they can be challenged, but they also learn from each other. And, just to kind of jump ahead a little bit, to my Wayland, actually to my Wellesley people, who are like really supportive of me and got a whole table, I take 2 tables here of all my keeps. But St. John's and St. Paul's also had very different histories. St. John's had 2 pastors in the course of 45 years. So very long serving pastors, starting with John Philbin in the around 1970-ish or so, is that right? And he was thoroughly embracing of Vatican II, and it became a place of lay leadership and involvement and living out one's baptismal call. St. Paul's, wonderful community, but definitely the leadership had to be more clerical, in its outlook. But we all have things to offer each other. If St. John's was the place where Voice of the Faithful was founded, in response to the clergy abuse crisis. And Svea is one of the founding members and dear friend and just wonderful collaborator. St. Paul's was going to have none of that. And that's what I, walked into. It means that you have to love and respect the communities for who they are. I would tell those ladies at St. Paul's, with all sincerity, the ones who prayed the rosary after the 9 o'clock Mass and the Divine Mercy Chaplain, thank you for praying for me. I really need your prayers. And I'm going to be talking a little bit later about the kinds of things that we did, both in Wayland and in Wellesley, to bring people together and realize that they had much more in common than what separated them. I used a line in a homily in Wayland. I said, despite, I had to wait a while before I could say this, despite what some people might perceive around here, School Street in Wayland is not the border between Israel and Palestine. I crossed that street, I didn't have to show my passport once. Kara, you lived it, so you know what I'm talking about. So, but it takes time, it takes patience, and it takes care and love for who your people are.
In listening, I think you were very patient and you listened, and that's all part of caring or hearing the other. We felt heard on both sides, and that goes a long way. Ian, did you want to?
But I turned my mic off now. You turned my mic off, and I couldn't turn it back on. Well, I was hearing in what you were saying how known the 2 parishes were. You knew the qualities of each parish, and that's part of loving, right? You have to know them first. And I think the parish that I was a part of in St. Mary's in Charlestown, when they collaborated with St. Catherine's, that was a very painful process. People were really grieving on both sides of that, but Father Ronan really navigated that by getting to know the people in both parishes, knowing that you weren't going to have everything you ever wanted at the end of the day, but did some really practical, strategic things to make sure that people felt heard and felt loved. So he went with a group over to the parish over at St. Catherine's, which was closing, and he said, what are the pieces that are most meaningful to you? What are the statues? What are the, which pews should we take? And ended up making a small chapel in St. Mary's. It was a St. Catherine's chapel that had the stained glass windows from the church. So if your grandmother got married at St. Catherine's, you could go and pray in that same church space, and to make sure that people really felt like their home was not gone. It was still very much a part of it. I feel like he had to take the time to get to know people first, to know what was a priority for them.
That's such a thoughtful idea, Jeanne, so you went from single parish, now you're working in a collaborative in Cohasset and Hull.
I was going to say, it's interesting because you could have been speaking about the 2 parishes that I actually work in now. Whereas
Everyone can relate, right?
one is very much lay empowered, and one has had very much more clerical leadership style. So when parishes come together, right? A lot of the reason is geographic. I came out of a parish, a single parish, in one town, one parish, where lay leadership was very much empowered, right? So it's easy, loving people becomes so important because it's easy to kind of say, the people in this parish all want to step up and do something, and the people in this parish don't. But the people in this parish really just want to be invited and taught and led to say, like, this parish is important to me, but my voice was never heard before, right? That aspect of listening and loving, I think, can be so important.
You know, we've talked about, you always say, I think it's really important to make a big parish, no matter how big it is, small, and make it feel small.
I think that sometimes in Catholic parishes, we may feel like there are a lot of people not coming to church, but our size compared to our Protestant brothers and sisters, right, is quite large. And I think the challenge of Catholic parishes that Karen and I have discussed in the past is to make big parishes small, right? So how can we make someone feel connected? Because I think people want to be connected to their parish. They want to be noticed. They want to be heard. They want to know that when they don't come, right, somebody notices that they weren't there. And I know that one of a few different ways that I've seen that play itself out. One is simply in hospitality and welcome, right? Someone being there to kind of say to you when you arrive at Mass, good morning, or remember you from the weekend before, right? And no one can do that alone. It requires teams of people to be able to welcome and be hospitable to those that come. But I would say the second way that I think is so important to make big parishes small is to invite people to opportunities, small faith communities and small work learning and small communities where they can be connected to one another, whether it's a ministry community or a faith sharing community or the like.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the power of small groups, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But you touched on community, and I mean, it's all about community, right? Like, how do we grow communities in our parish? But then, how do we grow our parish in our communities? And what does that look like? And Father Jim, I remember I would see you driving back and forth on Route 20, but then you were also like part of the community down at the high school or at a game or at the grocery store, like, kind of living your vocation with your community.
And honestly, that was when I knew that I had arrived and that I was part of the community. When I was picking up my dry cleaning on Route 20, and this SUV with like 3 kids hanging out the back saying, I said, that's awesome.
Is that me?
But anyway, it really is important, I think, for a pastor to become part of the community.
And for young people to see you out in the community.
We're walking this journey together. It's not just the pastor kind of standing at the helm, teaching people, but it's our learning from each other, our walking the journey of faith together. And I think that it's such a much richer experience than when it's talked on leadership. And I just have to give especially our here today, a shout out to my staff, like building the right team.
And that takes time.
It's huge. And having the right people in the right position. Kelly, my director of pastoral care, who's here, she is my right arm. And it's such an important part of leadership is allowing those gifts to come forward. And I have to just tell a little story about myself. Some of you know that I was in a very serious accident 9 months ago. I was almost killed, by being hit by a car. And it was many months before I was able to do anything. And I couldn't look at my emails. I just had to concentrate on my healing. Nothing stopped in our parishes because the lay leadership had already been empowered to exercise independent leadership. So that wasn't a brand new thing when I was suddenly incapacitated, and that makes all the difference.
I was always so curious too, like, how did you know to let go? Like, that was your leadership style. Like you just let go. And it could, like you didn't have to control everything. I guess that's, and you could see the gifts in other people and trust. Trust.
Exactly. But I think that having the right people in the right position is also key. And when you don't have the right person in the right position, sometimes you have to make decisions about that. And that's really, really hard. For someone who is both the one who has to make the ultimate decisions, and is also a priest and a pastor. But some of those hard decisions sometimes you have to make because the whole community can suffer by having the wrong person in the position. So the only way that I can truly let go, it wouldn't be my nature to micromanage anyway, and I don't think that it's a good style. But the people who are on my team, I trust completely. And we talk to each other about important decisions before they're made. But I don't have to look over their shoulder. They're doing amazing ministry.
I was just gonna say from the other side that as a layperson working in ministry, it's the flip side of being empowered, like knowing that someone trusts you causes you to kind of dig a little deeper and to use those gifts in a way that you wouldn't if you didn't. So when someone's micromanaging you or experiencing that, you kind of close into yourself and just want to complete that task, right? But when you've been lucky enough to be empowered by someone who helps you let your gifts shine, like I just feel like I've been lucky in that way, and I think that I would not have been able to or be able to do ministry in the same way without having had those key people, so pastors.
And I think there's an element too of being taught. I started at a parish when I was really young and very green and probably making a lot of mistakes. And my pastor trusted me, but also trusted his own leadership, that he was going to say, okay, these are the people that you want to get to know. He told me, it's funny, the people passing you in the car, yelling out the car window, he said, that's what I want from you. He said, if you're going to be doing faith formation for families, I want you to get to know the families. He said, I have a dog, take my dog for a walk. And just walk around the park, get to know the kids, get to know the families, and let them see you. And then he guided me into a place of leadership where that he could let me go, which I think was a huge gift for me. And I'm glad that he trusted me in that way.
Jeanne, you were saying that your pastor has a dog.
My current pastor does that.
So is this like a best practice? Get a dog. Laser, right?
They're laughing because that's not going to happen.
I'm not the strongest animal person myself, but the dog is like a natural icebreaker.
It's nice to know.
And it was, he got out in the community with the dog, and then you have this big, you do the pet blessings and bring people in from all over, and that crosses into interfaith and forming community.
It does. I will say, like I said,
Don't get a dog.
I do think that there's little, I don't think it has to be a dog. I think that there are just little ways, right, that whatever it is that you put yourself out in the community. Even in Duxbury at one point, I was at a play in the high school, and I was a parent who gave me a shortcut to get to the bathroom at the top level, so I wouldn't have to wait in line. And I was walking through the crowd, and you just get to know so many people. So many people were saying hello, and I was talking to people on the way up the navigating the thing, and one woman stopped me and said, "Do you work here, like at the high school?" And I said, "Well, no, I don't actually." She said, "Well, how do you know so many people?" And I said, "Well, I work at the parish here." And she was like, "Oh, that's my parish." And then she walked to the back with me, we had a great conversation. Even just any way to be out in the community. In my current parish, the pastor has a dog, and we do the pet blessing. We do like an interfaith event at the beginning of the year where there's a farmer's market. The farmer's market actually has a pet parade. So we've just added a pet blessing on. So the dog gives the segue to that. But I think it's no matter what your gift or your unique, anything can turn into that icebreaker, I think.
And it's being creative, too, and trying to come up with new ways to see an opportunity and kind of go meet it.
Just to piggyback on what you were saying, Jeanne, I think, too, the interfaith relations are also important as far as being part of a community. I'll never forget So I, meet on a regular basis with the clergy of other Christian denominations, Unitarian, and the rabbi of our synagogue. And there have been really important events of coming together. That terrible tragedy of the murders in the synagogue, Tree of Life in Pittsburgh. And there was a solidarity night at Temple Beth Elohim. And just being there and seeing how many people from my community were there. And I can't tell you how many congregants came up to me since I was in uniform saying, "Oh, thank you so much for being here with us." And so I think that in our Catholic communities, yes, we believe what we believe. We're nourished by our Catholic faith, our relationship with Jesus, our living out our baptismal calls, but we don't do it in a kind of ghetto isolation that has no connection to other people in the community.
I think that's similar in the way that we're saying, we're talking about empowering ways, like you're empowering your staff, the lay leadership to do things that it's not your style. There's a certain confidence in being willing to be both communities that I've been strongly connected to with Duxbury and now Cohasset and Hull have had a strong presence in the interfaith community. And I think that makes a big difference. We're confident in, we know what we believe and who we are. We also know that we share a lot in common with those other churches, and we're stronger if we're working together than apart.
I think that ties into the small groups, right? So all of those interfaith conversations are going to be happening probably in smaller faith community groups. The celebrations will be coming out of those small groups. And I think it gets to what you're saying, if that's a thing that vibrant parishes do to get to that title of the top. But that's just a great small groups that come out of a mutual respect or a mutual interest, a shared interest. That's where I think a lot of energy comes from, and that energy is what's going to push that parish to be more vibrant.
Jeanne, can you share just a little bit about, because I know you're like big on small groups, what your model is in your parish or was in your parish in Duxbury that seemed to work? I remember you saying something about seasonal.
So currently the small groups that we run are seasonal. So my experience up to this point of small groups was that they would be more long running. So we would do more small group, educational or small group like experiences as part of just a program. But I had the idea that small groups had to last forever. Not forever, but that they would be continually meeting all of the time and stay together. In my current setting, we do small groups that are seasonal. So there were fall small groups and Advent small groups and Lenten small groups and summer small groups. So there were 75 people doing small group experiences over the summer. And I came to appreciate that I was amazed being the new person to come into a small group the first time. And I was blown away by the level of sharing and the level of comfort that people had being part of this small group. Because they knew what it meant to share faith with other people. So they were immediately open to that experience. Now, the priming of that pump was before I got there, but now I've seen the power of people sharing faith stories with one another and the way that they are so open to share their personal faith experience in the small group, but also to connect. Like people come into the room and they're like, "Oh, I was with you during Advent," and then they start, and they start talking. And we spent a lot of time in the small groups this year reflecting on the upcoming Sunday scriptures. And that's been a powerful experience to actually break open the scriptures with other people before coming to Mass on Sunday and hearing it from the altar.
Well, I mentioned that throughout our conversation I was going to have to plug some of the C21 resources, so I'm going to do that. For those of you that don't know about this small group program, it's called Faith Feeds. It was developed after we were having lots of conversations with people that were coming to our events, and they said, "Oh, we did Alpha," or "We tried to do this and tried to do that, and I couldn't commit to 3 weeks, I couldn't commit to 6 weeks, I couldn't commit to anything, but I still want to be fed." So then we thought, why not take the riches of our magazine, of which we have 36 issues of themes, and then put together a turnkey model for parishes and Catholic school educators where you can download a guide, and it's filled with 2 and 3 articles. They're used as touchstones for conversation. The guide is so simple, it leads you through exactly how to do this. You can do it with 8, 10 people. You can do it with 80 people and just put people at different tables. And guess what? You can do it on Zoom and it works. We rolled it out just before the pandemic and we now have over 200,000 downloads of these guides. And Jeanne, you did it. Yeah.
We did do faith feeds at Holy Family in Duxbury, and we did it before the pandemic in a more condensed period during Lent. I think we did every other week, if I remember right, for a couple weeks straight. But then we did it seasonally, like one in the fall, like one during Advent, and people really loved the opportunity to come together with other people, but not be committed to the longevity.
Exactly.
It is a struggle in our world, in the busyness of people's lives, to find a way that they can connect with each other. We did do it with appetizers and beer and wine.
Yeah, that's great. And there's so many guides online on our website, so you can download, you can have any kind of conversation you want. But I'm proud to say that here we are, 3 years after the pandemic, and we started a Zoom version of Faith Beats. It'll be 3 years in April. And we meet every Friday at 1 p.m. And we have people from all over the world joining us. And we did several Faith Feeds a week during the pandemic. And I feel like some of my really close friends that I've never physically met are part of the Faith Feeds community. So you can have intimacy in these small groups with perfect strangers, but you can also find intimacy on Zoom. It really works. Okay, so anything else on small groups, Anne?
I mean, I don't know if we want to segue into Breakfast with God, but that was a small group.
Yeah,
sure. Very big group.
This is a perfect example of a need back in the pandemic and a resource that was created for that need and that formed just this extraordinary group of people from across the country.
So Breakfast with God came out of an idea. There were a lot of families who were missing faith formation programs for their children. And they were worried about, well, if we don't have CCD, then my child will be a pagan. I don't know, but they were very worried about it. And also they themselves, I think, maybe they didn't name it as this, but they themselves were really missing church, and they were missing that time to be with their own faith. And Zoom Mass, I think, was very, very challenging for families. And it was very hard for kids to connect in that way. So I was approached by Karen, and actually we didn't meet until after the pandemic. We had some.
Oh, that's right. We only met over Zoom.
We only met over Zoom. And so just to create some kind of programming for families. So every Sunday, similar to talking about the gospel beforehand, we said, this would be a great program to do alongside a Zoom Mass. We talked about what the gospel was. We did a craft. I found a storybook that would coincide with the gospel theme. We would sing a song. It was very routine and something that it was a predictable routine so that kids could really get into it. And we saw that at the beginning it was mostly, the kids were there and the parents would set them up with their iPads. And then after a while, parents started to appear also in the screens, and
grandparents
who hadn't seen each other, and they would meet, sort of similar to if you meet up at Mass, they would meet up in this Zoom, and we had people from all over the country zooming into this time together, singing together on their own Zoom screens. And
Anne has this gorgeous voice, and then we have Father Krane, who's a Jesuit here in BC, and it was 9 o'clock on Sunday mornings, and it was like, I'm dating myself here, but do you all remember like Romper Room? Does that ring a bell? It was kind of like, it was Romper Room, and instead of Miss Jeanne, it was Miss Anne and Father Tron, and like, it was extraordinary. We did over 80 episodes during the pandemic, Sunday mornings at 9 o'clock, and it was magic. It was the Holy Spirit at work, and also a guide. So there are Breakfast with God guides that teach catechists and Catholic school teachers and parents how to do a breakfast with God in your class, in your home. And Anne develops the guides, and we have more guides, again, download it. We just we heard from a whole group of educators in Ontario, and they started their own Breakfast with God. So it gets out there, but that was pretty amazing. So yeah, I just think we kind of have to lead into the need and then come up.
Actually, go ahead, Jim.
I was just gonna say, it's a gift for those of us in parishes when we're looking for resources, because we did during the pandemic send out Breakfast with God, because it's impossible for a small parish staff, right, to be able to meet all the needs of the people in the community. So then we could send that out, and then that was something that met that need, and we didn't, not that we didn't have to continue to support young families, but we had something for people with really young children.
Funny, you said it's free. It's free, friends. That's what we like.
The best things in life.
Yeah.
Faith.
No, it's so wonderful that those creative people allow us to kind of get through and those resources can continue to support. But I don't think anyone would disagree that people were so longing to see each other. And there was such a hunger to be together. So one of the more, I don't want to use the word successful, but kind of successful, but vibrant projects that we undertook. We were sitting around the table and talking about our confirmation program and lamenting the fact that was existing in most other parishes that a huge percentage, probably over 80% of the kids who were being confirmed weren't coming to Mass on a regular basis, neither were their families. So we decided to reverse or change the paradigm. So we reduced the number of classes, but we made a Mass that was oriented towards teenagers, the center of the confirmation program. And because I have people like Trisha, my director of communications, who could set up barcodes for them to scan, to sign in, and so forth, so it was kind of cool for them. But that built into something that before the pandemic, we were getting 400 people at that Mass. And it was not only the kids who could kind of sit together and, it'd be cool to, it's okay because my friends are there, but their parents and their families started to come back. And elderly people in the parish who might not even like the music, they just loved seeing the young people involved as Eucharistic ministers, as electors, as greeters. It became theirs. And I think we've got probably on any given Sunday night 25 kids in the music ministry, and it's contemporary music, kind of worship and praise style music, and we've got percussion, we've got the whole thing. But it really was built into something, and when the pandemic came, it just stopped. So we had to find creative ways to kind of keep things going. But now that we're back, it's building again, and it's so exciting to see. That also, just as far as how we're dealing with collaboration, and the reality of the limited number of clergy that we have to celebrate these liturgies, that 5 p.m. Mass on Sunday afternoon rotates each week between St. John's and St. Paul's. And that also has been a wonderful way that people who had never darkened the door of the other church 2.5 miles away now became used to and comfortable with the other church. And we decided to do the same thing with our 9 o'clock Mass on Sunday mornings, which is our family Mass, so we can put resources into making that something really special for the parents with young families and the young children themselves. And again, it's a truly collaborative effort.
That's a great idea. The ping pong between the churches to get the parishioners to experience both. Father Jim, you're connected to a Catholic school, meaning your parish it has a Catholic school, and then also in St. Columbkille's with St. Columbkille's. That goes up until 8th grade. Is that correct? Yeah. And thinking about how you steward that whole community and the crossover between the parish life and Catholic school. I think that's so important, that connection.
It is, and it particularly was challenging during the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
But again, I would say that having the right leader in place makes all the difference. I mean, I don't take any credit for what the school did, except supporting our principal, who did an amazing job of shepherding, through the worst days that we were in person the whole time. And then now that the school has grown and is thriving because people who experienced the school now realize that now that the pandemic is waning, that still that St. John's has something special to offer, and we have waiting lists in most of the classrooms now. We actually had dangerously low enrollment before that. So yes, I think it's been really vital to our parish as far as.
That's kind of the old school model of like the big parish, right? And then the Catholic schools around. I'm from Arlington and part of St. Agnes Parish growing up. And like I said, you're raised by your Catholic family. I was raised by St. Agnes Parish, and the CEO of basketball games and all that. And we had a conversation about programming, and you had said, there are some, if you go back in time, there are some really good programming parish models, that could still work today. And what we've lost is really the connection to how parishes can help families. And you gave me an example. You said, for instance, like, why isn't the parish going to do a night where they teach parents how to lock down their kid's cell phone? Just so that people understand that the parish really wants to help their family. I don't know if I said that right.
Yeah. I would say navigate some of those.
Lock down.
Yeah, lock them down. Get it to
It's the mother of me. Lock it down.
No, lock it down. But I think, I think that I talk to parents a lot, and parents have these huge questions that are weighing on them so much about technology. How do I monitor my child's use of technology? Parents also have a lot of questions regarding faith formation, and they're very nervous to ask these questions, and because they feel like they're supposed to know. Also, I teach very, very little children, and a lot of them are saying, like, I don't know if my child's hitting the milestones at the right time, but they're afraid to ask each other, and they don't want to compare kids. And so I think giving them opportunities in small groups that might not necessarily tie to religion at all, but to give them time together to say, hey, we're here to support you. We're bringing a speaker in about technology. We're bringing a pediatrician to talk about steps that you can take with your child to work on social emotional skill building post-COVID. These are things that parents are really worried about. And in talking to a parent for 20 minutes, you know that this is on their mind. And so to bring in something that addresses a real need is amazing. And even just to say, one of the priests at St. Columbkille brought back an older tradition. So we haven't, since the pandemic, we haven't had altar servers at our church. And he had one of the students who altar serves at Sunday Mass. She's the only one who altar serves at Sunday Mass. He had her serve at a student Mass. The 20 kids signed up or something the next day to be altar servers because they were so excited to see a peer, and that's a small group, right? That's a small group of children. They're seeing something and they're like, wow, this is amazing. And I know that one of them, whose family doesn't normally go to church, she said, can we please go to church on Sunday because I have to practice. And so it's really a way of bringing people in because we're meeting the needs of children as well as families.
And showing that as a parish community, it's so important for our parishioners to feel like that we understand, or at least trying to understand the lives of families that are, or individuals that are in front of us. So easy we can make judgments about what people's lives look like, or why people aren't coming to church, or whatever. But making that effort to understand and try to meet that need. As a parent, I would be saying my parish understands this self need I have,
And also just the epidemic that we're all facing with mental health. I think if the parish could find a way to help with mental health of adults and young people, it would be huge because there aren't enough therapists out there. There aren't enough resources out there. And to be able to say, no, I'm going to get this kind of help at my church, that would mean the world, So it's just trying to figure that out. Again, going back to need and answering need with an opportunity.
And loving.
And
knowing them. You gotta know them first, and once you know them, then we can meet their needs.
let's talk a little bit about catechesis, how do you recruit catechists, faith formation, just little things like that. Little challenges. Any thoughts?
I was very green at a parish, so I didn't do the best job. So I can continue.
I'm a strong believer in family faith formation, and it certainly doesn't make catechist recruitment easy, but it makes it easier, right? Because they're there with their children.
Well, so talk about that model a little bit for those that aren't doing that.
So would be a model where parents and children come together. So in Duxbury, we did, at Holy Family, we did a gradual transition from traditional child-centered classrooms. After a couple of years of experimenting, we transitioned into where parents and children came together, gathered together for a meal and a set of opening activities where they would learn about whatever the topic was for the night, and then we would set the tone for the evening where parents and children were together. And I think giving parents and children the opportunity to interact around activities together. So it wasn't that they necessarily came and parents did one thing and kids did another, but rather were in together. So parents were getting language as to how to talk about something with their children related to faith. And then gave them an opportunity to split apart and learn about whatever the topic was at their own level, and then come back together. That can look at a bunch of different forms, and then the challenge becomes how to translate it to their homes, right? How to get them bringing it home and activating it in their day-to-day lives. For me, both as having had a child, at least two of my children take part to some extent in family faith formation versus what they had experienced before. Even when I was teaching them home, the power of being in a room full of parents and kids together that are just on this journey, and for just to understand that faith formation doesn't end at a particular time, right? That we all have the opportunity to grow. We're all being called to be formed. And we're not experts. As a parent, you're called to be an expert at everything, right? Whether it's technology, faith, and for some people, in health and wellness and mental health and education. And, my kids have long surpassed me. I'm an 8th grader, a 10th grader, and a 12th grader, and they've long surpassed me in their ability to calculate math. I can't deal with them with their math homework. Well, some people feel that way about faith, and we have an opportunity, I think, to bring that open for them and to help them be more empowered to share their faith.
And I think that model helps with more God talk. Like parents aren't as intimidated because, like you said, they were on that journey together. Yeah.
I just think the more that we can empower parents, for whatever reason, I'm one of 5 children, and my siblings themselves, like when their kids will ask questions, sometimes my siblings' answer is ask Jeanne. Do you know what I mean? Because they don't want to answer the question. Because for some reason around faith, we have this extreme fear of giving the wrong answer.
But you know the wrong answer.
Giving the wrong answer, and Google doesn't always have the answer. So parents are fearful to make a mistake, so they avoid the question.
Mm-hmm.
So the more that we can empower parents to feel like they can share it with their children.
And those parents would then hopefully become catechists, because I think it's not always parents that are catechists. And I had a very hard time getting catechists when I was a information director, because people just felt, I don't know how to do it. And I said, well, you have a textbook and you go to church, so you'll be all set. And they're like, no, I can't. What if they ask me a question? I don't know. And so to try to empower people to teach in a classroom who are not necessarily trained as teachers and who might not necessarily have children themselves is incredibly difficult. To get them in the room is incredibly difficult. And then I think that to think that when we would gather them at the beginning and do sort of a professional development training around our textbooks, we would say, okay, I know you don't feel qualified. God doesn't call qualified people. God qualifies people. So we're going to just work together and realize how qualified we already are. And I think that was the case with Breakfast with God as well. I think parents really got used to seeing, when we read the gospel of the tenants who kept getting murdered. Oh my gosh, we read that gospel and we were like, how are we going to... And then we ended up doing little bunny foo-foo, popping them on the head. And parents were like, oh, I can just do that? Oh, okay, I can do that. I can do that with my child. And so I think it just, it gives them the confidence to be able to say, I can talk about faith stuff because I have a faith. And I think that's all you need.
And also, I think with Breakfast with God, you taught parents that they can go into any library and pick up any children's book and God's right in there, you know, and giving them new ways to take their kids on a God walk and kind of start that conversation. That said, I also think too that there's an opportunity for our high school students that have, you know, been confirmed to, you know, usually, and even in Wayland, Jim, you know, confirmation, 10th grade, and then boom, right? So,
Graduation.
yeah. So kind of trying to take that as an opportunity and maybe even teaching some of the younger classes. And and college kids too.
I think the blessing of younger kids, we have a couple of high school seniors that are catechists now, when you watch them, they're not afraid to just say, oh, I don't know the answer to that question, let me go find it for you. And they don't use churchy language, and they don't use, you know, sometimes, we don't recognize that we just need to speak plainly and simply so that people can understand what we're talking about. And then they're like, oh, I know, you know, little buddies with you, I know how to do that. Like, if we just translate our churchy language sometimes into language that parents can understand, they'll know that they can in fact empower them. They can in fact do it. What they think what seems impossible.
Yeah. Did you?
You know, I'm just listening because honestly, it's people on my team who know much more about this than I do, so I'm just listening.
You know, all right, so here we are. Mass attendance is down, but I don't want to talk about negative things. I want to be hopeful and talk about the promise that lives within each one of us to grow our parishes and our faith in our Catholic churches. Thoughts on how we're going to bring people back? Father Jim.
You know, I have given some thought to that because you kind of gave me a little preview. We're going to talk about that. It's a really hard one, but I think that it starts with helping people to understand that we are all disciples and just sharing your faith, sharing, you know, what your faith means to you, and also, you know, what this community of faith means to you. And I think that it's really going to be about, you know, empowering parishioners to reach out to their people they know, they care about. We can't be everywhere. We're just kind of getting the word out that way.
I think there's something to the other things that we mentioned, like having opportunities where my parish understands me, you know, like with mental health counselors and those kind of things, that gives our parishioners something really easy to talk about, right? So their friends and neighbors, like, come to my church, we're doing this. But I think the second thing is that the people that have come back post-pandemic are as committed or more committed than they were before, because for the first time in their lives, they went without it. Like, they went without church, and they went without community. So yes, not everyone has come back, but those that have come back are committed and just waiting for us to kind of train them and empower them to go out and do it, because you can't do it alone, right? To invite their neighbors to come back. And I think that also hits on hospitality and welcome. How welcoming are we when someone comes through our doors?
Right. That's just so important. I also think we can't underestimate the power of prayer. We need to pray for our parishes. We need to pray for each other. And we need to, speaking in small groups, forming opportunities to pray together and to be together. And just another quick commercial for one of our resources. We started this last year. It's called Pray It Forward. We meet every Wednesday at 4 p.m. on Zoom for 15 minutes, midweek, and we gather and we pray. We open it with an opening prayer. We read the gospel. Someone volunteers in advance to offer a 2 to 3 minute reflection. We open it up for prayer intentions, which are just extraordinary. And then close with a closing prayer. It's 15 minutes, sometimes 16, sometimes 17, but never more than that. And it started out slow, like most big things do. We had about 50 people sign up to be part of our Pray It Forward community. And Right now, today, we're at 800. It doesn't cost anything. It's 15 minutes. It's Zoom. You can take it. We will give it to you. We will give you the logo, give you everything. It's yours. Do it in your school. Do it in your parish. Do it in your home. 15 minutes. It is so powerful, and I know I'm taking a look around and I see my Faith Meets friends, my Pray It Forward friends. Like, you know the power of these kinds of communities, and they can bring your parish together. Okay, so commercial done. Let's open it up and just have people asking questions and maybe sharing some of your ideas and best practices. We didn't get into websites and digital ministry because we are doing another program just like this in 2 weeks on digital ministry. But we can't not say the importance. Have a website that has your mass times on there, and have it open.
That you can open it on a cell phone. It has to be different. You have to be able to open it on a phone.
I mean, digital ministry is huge, and we need to unpack it and talk about it, but that would take like another 2 hours, but we will touch on it. So anyway, let me just open it up for your thoughts.
After being active in my parish for 40 years, the parish closed, and my wife and I decided to do a Holy Family Parish at Wellesley. And at the beginning, I approached the Faith Formation Director, Jeanne, with some ideas I would like to continue. And she gave me some sort of response, like, yeah, let's continue to talk about that. The answer wasn't, no, we don't do that here. And I can't tell you how welcoming that was, and I appreciate that. And as more parishioners from my parish have come to Holy Family, our pastor, Father Bob, is here. And recently he put in the bulletin, if you've decided to come to our parish from St. Frederick's, we want you to know that we're very happy that you're here. We welcome you and join the community. And I can't tell you, Father Bob, how many people have been so appreciative of that. So it's just a simple thing.
I'd just like to confirm what Jim had said about Wayland. I was in Wayland 55 years ago, and the advice of the pastor to me as I was unpacking was, the people here are a strange lot. Stay miles and miles away from them. And so you can picture how the clerical model got started.
Thank you for that history, Jerry. Go ahead.
Thank you for sharing. As I was listening, I thought, could you ever decide to do a family catechetical program where the parents would come to be taught the theme, and then they would be the ones who would teach it to their children, so that we have failed in adult formation, and so the program that I participated in, it was the parents who came to be educated, and they were the ones who would go back and prepare their children for communion or whatever it was. And then the children would come on another day to have sort of a little prayer about the theme with a coordinator or facilitator. So I think it's worth looking into, because I think we have failed in forming adults. We're so busy with the children that we've missed the whole adult formation.
I think that's a really interesting point. I think something that we learned both from Breakfast with God, but also some of the things that we've done in our school, parents are really wanting that education as well, because they feel a lack of confidence around it. And there's a song that we do before the gospel where we sing this, and we sing your word, oh God, be in our minds and on our lips and in our hearts. So many parents were like, that's what that is? What? I did too. I just went in mass. They didn't know. And so just to give them these these little pieces of information, invite them, even if you don't want to do a whole faith formation program in that way, invite them to come into the church and look at the stuff up close. Invite them to, I had a parent saying, I said something about the tabernacle, and they were like, is that little golden fridge? Yeah, that's the little golden fridge. That's it. So I feel like to give parents some of the vocabulary, because I think you're right, I think we've failed a little bit with the adults. And so to give them the words and give them a moment to see the stuff so that they can have that confidence to teach their kids at home.
Hi, Father Rob Dean from Holy Family Expiry. And building upon what you were saying about the adults, one insight we have incorporated in our goals for a pastoral plan is in regard to helping people in their relationship with Jesus. Fundamentally, do people really know Jesus, love Jesus, and allow His Spirit to motivate them? Some people, I think, are praying in a way that doesn't help foster that personal relationship with Jesus. And even just to help people know how that can be done. And there are various ways, but it's not only speaking, but listening, and of course engaging Scripture, as well as just quiet, silent time. But in the vision statement, we're seeking to, in fact, have them live out and think with the mind of Jesus and love with His heart. And in order to do that, one needs to have a living, breathing relationship with Jesus, and then allow that to filter through how they think, how they love, and in turn how they act. And we're going to try small ways, just to small groups, help people learn how to deepen that relationship with Jesus. And that's fundamental then to becoming disciples, because if they know Jesus, they're on fire with His Spirit, they're zealous to want to share what they've come to know and love and experience in their own life.
Bob, thank you for sharing that. It's so true and it's so fundamental. And I'll be interested to hear more about how you're doing it at your parish, because I think that's very important. Yes.
I'd like to know your opinion about diverse parish. I mean, can you have your parish when can you find Latinos, Asian, African Americans? So my question is about how can we work together? Because normally you can see Latinos on one side, Americans, so what is your opinion about this issue?
Well, I think it's obviously very important to bring communities together. It kind of depends on where you are and who your community is, what the special challenges are. So I think it's kind of hard to speak on in the abstract. I think it would be part of the same, what I was talking about earlier, knowing who your community is and what the challenges are for bringing them together, getting to know each other, getting to understand each other.
I think also in a broader perspective, we're in a very particular flashpoint in history where we're really thinking about these questions more of diversity and inclusion, and it's at the education level, and it's at the national level, and I think it needs to be at the church level as well. And I'm thinking that might be a great small group topic as well, is to think about how is our church doing with this particular topic, with diversity, equity, and inclusion. What are we doing? What can we be doing more of? And I feel like there is a lot of energy around that nationally right now, and people are wanting to learn more, and people are wanting to participate in that particular thing. So that could be something that really helps a parish, is to involve the energies of all the communities in their area.
Just wanted to remind people that if you go on the Faith Feeds Guides, we also have Faith Feeds Guides to have conversations on collaboration and race, equity, and inclusion, a whole series. So that's also an opportunity.
Today is the 10th anniversary of Pope Francis being selected as Pope. And one of the charisms of his papacy has been the call for social justice. And I consider that to be one of the hidden treasures of the church. How can that be unpacked in a way that becomes attractive for more people to want to come, especially young people?
I've seen in my parishes, people respond to invitations to become involved in social justice action with great enthusiasm. And in fact, in bringing parishes together, I can speak of the Wellesley experience specifically, we had professionally facilitated meetings on a couple of topics. One of them was on adult faith enrichment, and one was on Christian service. And out of that grew initiatives that became truly collaborative. So we were having an information night on the possibility of partnering with Catholic Charities to sponsor refugee families. And that night, 25 people from St. Paul's, 25 people from St. John's, very enthusiastic about it, and that grew into that ministry. Also as a collaborative effort, and again, this was about people gathering around the table in a large facilitated group, talking about what are the needs in our community and beyond our community that we can be better serving now. That was the genesis of our collaborative St. Vincent de Paul Society. Because we realized that there was a need that even in affluent suburbs, there's a lot of hidden poverty and a lot of hidden need that was right there in front of us. So I think, finding ways to invite people to talk about that, and I found that they responded very enthusiastically.
I think also in outreaching to families and individuals that some service is attractive to people. It's an entry point that's non-threatening, that's like people are welcomed in Duxbury and soon in Cohasset and Hull. We did these meal packaging events through a local group that called End Hunger New England. And the first year we did it, we just invited in a bunch of people, right? Like it was a great opportunity for families to do service together, for individuals to come involved. People were attracted to it. But we realized at the end of that first crazy night of 5 hours of meal packaging and dust and rice being kind of flown around the parish center, how excited people were about the service, but also that we didn't take advantage of all the opportunities that were there and the power of prayer. And the following year when we invited people in, we stopped every hour on the hour and had the people stop their packaging and we prayed. And we introduced some scripture around social justice. Not that that was a formal education, but it was like a chance to just sort of open that door for a brief period of time and make the connection for people. And that's stayed with me. We've kind of done different versions of it over those next few years after the pandemic, and then now that's kind of stayed with me as ways to kind of bring an entry point for people, is to kind of make the connection between service and our faith. Because they're attracted to service, but they don't always do it. We don't always see the connection to our faith.
Yeah, I also think that making that connection is super important, especially with kids, because I think that we do a lot of service programs at our school, we have for many years, and I think there's always that connection of, oh, we're going to help these people because they need it. Jesus helped others, we're going to help. And it's very nominal, it's very surface level. But when you get students to really think, we had our middle schoolers write letters, Christmas cards to women who are incarcerated. And some students really were saying, I don't think I want to do that. They did something really wrong. And then, their teacher did a great job of scaffolding a lesson around people who are incarcerated. And they talked a lot about forgiveness, and then that really got to the heart of not just service, but justice and social justice, and making that connection, especially for middle schoolers, is so vital when you're doing that work.
I also think it's an opportunity for storytelling, and our faith is all about storytelling and learning from others, about service and social justice and sharing their stories, and even having a night in the parish where you're just gathering together to share each other's stories. The power in that is pretty extraordinary.
You talked about small groups, and you mentioned scripture reflection. Were there other small group projects or programs that you found that were really successful? And did you have staff leading them, or lay people, or did you recruit people to run them? And if you had any that were intergenerational, so you're not, here faith formation, here seniors, and here this, and here's that you're really developing programs that are creating the full community. Thanks.
I think in family faith formation, some small groups developed that were somewhat intergenerational in my experience, and Mother Bob can jump in there too, but I think they one of the blessings that came from family faith formation is parents were saying, like, I didn't know that other family was Catholic. I had dinner with them, and we were having a conversation, I didn't know they shared our values. So I think some small groups bubbled up there, but as far as intentionally piloting small groups, in the groups that I coordinate and lead now, there's a combination of staff and lay parishioners that lead them. So I invited staff who wanted to lead a small group to do that. And then when we invited people to join a small group, there was just a box that said, I would like to host a small group, be a part of a small group, and join a small group, or I would like to lead a small group. And if you said you were going to lead a small group, then I just called and trained that person on how to do that, so that there's a mix of people. And it's used different resources, but most of them have been rooted in scripture on that.
I would like you to pass the microphone to Kelly Moran, my director of pastoral care, and she can share with Ann Mears, because there have been some really beautiful small groups, some specific around reading, others are on different topics that I think really have been beautiful, and also been able to call for the gifts of some parishioners who are particularly gifted in this. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I can, absolutely. So Seasons of Hope is a seasonal bereavement ministry resource that is unbelievable. And I think what we're really realizing at St. John St. Paul Collaborative is this is a ministry that isn't being offered at a lot of parishes. As a result, because it is being offered, we have people driving from New Bedford to come to Seasons of Hope. We have to offer it over a couple of days now because we have so many people in a small group context, particularly with bereavement. You can't really get more than 12 or 15 in a room where it becomes just too difficult to share. So it's growing and growing to the point where we can't really sustain it at its level. So if your parish does not yet have a bereavement ministry, it needs one. And that is intergenerational as well. There are so many siblings who have lost siblings, and it's not just for senior citizens. We have a diverse group. And the other group I thought you might mention, Anne, is about the Just Faith group that we did during Lent and COVID.
Yeah, we set up unfortunately it got stopped because of COVID, but we did set up a small group offering, and we had a huge take up of that, and that was very intergeneration. So a little bit similar to you did, but we did it on the upcoming gospel for 6 weeks of Lent. Unfortunately, we got through 3 and 4, and then or maybe 3, and then COVID hit. But we did transition to online, and there are still people now who say that for them that was a really great experience, even though it was very, very short. So they were very intergenerational.
One other thing I want to mention is tied in really well with social justice is Just Faith Ministries as a racial justice ministry, and that is a small group model as well. And so to your point, it is just a really easy foray into understanding where social justice and racial justice converge. It's a really important conversation that everyone's having, and a really great touch point, I think. And there are trainings, and it's free. Yeah.
Not so much a question, but getting at the social justice question about it being a hidden treasure in the church and social teaching, I agree wholeheartedly. But I think there's an overlooked springboard for social justice in every parish, and that's the second collections. every one of those second collections has to do with justice. And all of them, whether it be the Black and Native American collection, whether it be Catholic Relief Services, they all have websites. And if a small group of people educated themselves about each of these ministries and offered their service to the pastor to speak about as the collection came up, I think they could sensitize a whole parish very quickly around that idea.
Jerry, just to pick up on that, one of the things that started as a St. John's tradition has become a collaborative tradition is what we call the Lenten gift. And in each year, the Service Commission decides on a particular organization or cause that it's going to sponsor. So for example, last year, the group we sponsored was Boston Healthcare for the Homeless. And we were lucky enough to have Dr. Jim O'Connell, who's the founder, come and speak with our parishioners. And we did a whole, series of education with pieces of the bulletin, teaching about this week after week. This year we're doing a group that's supporting families in Ukraine. But again, it's a whole educational thing on how this particular event is serving people in need. So that's just one of the ways that we've found to make the connection that it's not just writing a check, but doing over the course of more than a month education on this, so that they learn, so that people are able to learn more about what they're supporting.
Have you or anybody in the room had experience with, our pastor often will say from the altar, we have a need, we don't have a parish, we don't step forward, but never really says what it is that needs to be built. Have you had any experience with having like a student fair that Boston College has in the fall, of all the groups that are available to students, or survey, any kind of survey, a general survey of your parishioners that you might have found successful?
A survey to recruit volunteers, you mean?
To find out what people really want, what they're really looking for.
So I think post-pandemic, or during the pandemic, we did that a little bit at Holy Family, because we felt like we were spinning out all of these weekly email blasts, or at one point actually 3 times a week, with video messages from members of the staff and from the pastor and all that. And we were offering all these resources like Sundays, breakfast with God, thank you, and other type things, but we didn't know whether we were hitting it. So we did give a survey that had a rather large response, but I think the best survey that I've ever been a part of was our second grade families at Holy Family, when they came with their children for faith formation. We gave them an opportunity to fill out an open-ended survey on the way in and on the way out, and we asked them just where they were in their relationship. Were they actually regular mass attenders, and if not, what were the obstacles that stood in the way, and how could we help them grow on their faith journey over the course of the next year? And because they were anonymous and they were set up in a way, we played music in the background while they filled them out. We gave them time to do it and told them not to write their name on it unless they really wanted to. The answers that came back, I read them through and through and through over and over again, because it just helped us understand our people so much better.
Father, talk about synodality, please. Synodality.
Why don't you talk about it?
No, you're better.
No, you can. Somebody give her the mic, please.
Isn't that what we've been talking about?
Exactly.
I just have to say the most important, and thank you for the 10 years of Pope Francis. Thank you, Pope Francis. The most important survey anyone is ever going to do is a listening session for the Synod on synodality. And if you didn't participate in the original phase of the Synod, you're still welcome to do that now, because we have 2 more years of this Synod. But really, in essence, your parishes can have listening groups, gather people together, invite them in over a little bit of hospitality, and have a couple of very open-ended questions, like, if you were having coffee with Pope Francis, what would you ask him? Or what would you tell him? Or what's one way we can be more accessible to people? Where is the church really meeting a need? Where is the church not meeting a need? These open-ended questions can go in so many different directions, but people want to share what they think about their church, and they're going to do that in a listening session. So synodality, synodality, synodality.
Yes, and actually, I think, Kelly, you found that that also a lot of people who may not have shared things at a listening session when we were soliciting anonymous comments, online, that we got hundreds and hundreds of responses, and I think people were able to kind of really share what was going on in their minds and hearts.
One last question over here. Good evening, thank you so much. This is very, very helpful. We're from a parish on the North Shore here, and we'd be considered a small country parish, and not particularly wealthy parish. We're actually very much struggling. And so we're not really able to bring in the best people to serve our parish. And what's happening is the Pastoral Council is seeing the need, but we're getting really burnt out, okay? We're all people working full-time, we're having full-time responsibilities, and we're really getting burnt out. So we pray, we hope, we try. Do you have any wisdom as to how we should be approaching this for the next couple of years as we seek to rebuild and draw people back in?
I don't think any of us have answers to that question, but I think the best would be to focus on one area, right? And take some of the Karen's free resources. So, you know what I mean? That if there's one area that can build people up, whatever it is, because none of our parishes can do it all. I was going to say back to the social justice people, when I was in Duxbury, we combined with the Plymouth parishes, the 3 Plymouth parishes and other places, and did Just Faith online and other resources, because no staff has enough people to do every single thing that needs to be done, really. You have to pick and choose where to put your effort and your focus.
And I remember you saying to me, the worst thing a parish can do is do too much. Try to do too much and not do anything.
We can't do everything and do it well.
Yeah. But I also do think we need to lean on each other. And as we close out this session, a couple of things. One is that if anyone has some ideas that are working in your parish, please raise your hand just so that we can share them. Also, I mentioned that in 2 weeks' time, March 28th, we're doing a whole series just like this, communication strategies for vibrant parishes and Catholic schools. It'll be a terrific panel. That said, I think we need to share not only our faith, but also our ideas with each other. And I think that the Catholic Church doesn't do enough of that. And we have to find new ways to do that. I'll also say too that what we learned from the listening sessions and during the synodal process is that a lot of young people aren't at the parishes, right? So the new parishes are now in the Catholic high schools and in the Catholic colleges. And we need to find young people and meet them where they're at and have conversations and listen to them and ask them what they want in the church. And we started this project at the beginning of the pandemic. It's called the Student Voices Project. And it was an opportunity for young people to participate in the life of the church by telling the church what their hopes are. And now we've talked to 5,000 high school and college students so far. We have all the data. We have a diagnostic tool. You can read about it in the magazine. And if in fact you're interested in doing that in your Catholic school or in your parish, let us know. We need to reach out to young people. They are the church of the future. They're the church now, but we've got to get them in. Anyone want to offer up an idea?
this is just one thought, but I would probably start with the people who are already coming to church. And not with some kind of a handout, but by standing there and saying, will you talk to me about, how are we going to do this? And collect those ideas and name some phone numbers and email addresses, and begin a conversation, that way.
Karen, can you say a little bit about Mass and Mingle?
Oh, yes.
So,
Yeah, we want to hear from Newark next.
yes, from who? Oh, Newark. Yeah, why don't we do Newark now?
A thing about, getting involved, so what we did is, we were really youth leader, and we have the kids that get service hours, and that at least gets them there. They have to go to youth group twice a month, and they get service hours for it. We do an Appalachian trip, and they get service hours for it, and it hooks them in, and they love it, and they come back. Because we were trying to start a youth group for these kids and no one was coming. And then when the youth leader hooked it to service, it seems a little bit of a ploy, but it gets them there and they love it and they have fun and then they come back. And we had many times where we planned it and no one came. And now minimal she'll get 30 kids.
Hi, my name is Jay Russo. I worked at many parishes in the Archdiocese of Boston. And I've gone to parishes that are just so sleepy. And one of the things, I'm a director of religious education, and I have found that if, children come to at least receive First Communion, right? And to involve their parents, but not even just to make them come to classes, but to have liturgies where the children are doing the readings and bringing up the gifts. And guess what? Parents will come to those masses. And then, what you have to do though, is you have to have coffee and donuts, and have all your extroverts on your committees to come out and say, hi, it's so nice to see you here. Oh, did you know that next week we're going to have blah, 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 blah. But that really, really works. To reach the parents through the children, I have found, is just 100% successful. And it's worked in all the parishes I've been in. I'm in Boston now. I don't even speak the language, but you know what? We have all people everywhere. It's great. I'll talk to you afterwards.
Thanks for your energy.
Okay, yes. So
Here's
I'm from
Newark.
Yes. So I'm DRE at Newark, New Jersey. This is my first year actually. One thing I did is transition from catechist to family plus faith formation. So we actually have the families come in every last week of the month, and I do something really important with the families, with the parents and their children. So after that, I've been seeing this really big change, which is being it's what you said. The parents are afraid. They think they are supposed to know something, or they are supposed to know the way. But as a parish, we cannot assume, because we are here to bring something really important for them, which is plant the seed. The kids are the seed, and we are just to bring the parents water, and their goal is to water them. Because families don't want more, they want meaningful. Once you bring them meaningful, they are gonna ask for more. So it is really important if you start to see more as an adult formation and be more focused on that, and as well as the kids, because as you said, they are the church in the future. Yeah, so I think that's important.
Thank you for that. And thank you for the long drive coming and being with us. It really matters. I'll just leave with one invitation. If any of you in this room know any 20 or 30 something, and maybe they don't go to Mass all the time, or maybe they haven't found the right parish, we have a new model that we rolled out. It's called Mass and Mingle. it invites 20 and 30-somethings to 5 p.m. Mass once a month at St. Ignatius Church. Following the Mass, there's a mingle. And the mingle is free beer and wine, hors d'oeuvres, and then we have a big question. And the big question is so that they can have conversation about maybe something that they're challenged with, that maybe their faith could help them illuminate or solve. And again, we launched it 2 months ago, and we have over 300 young people that are part of our massive community. We're going to be going to Red Sox games, we're doing a dinner at the end of the month, and we're really forming a community. And a lot of these young people haven't been to Mass, but there's no other model out there that uses Mass as the lead-in. You walk through Mass to get to the mingle. You can't just come to the mingle. So we're hopeful, and please pray for that model. We need it desperately. Pray for these panelists, Jeanne Cregan, Father Jim, Jeanne. Thank you for your